The card that we're going to be looking at today is the Knight of Wands, and this is a great card, I think, to start the new year off with. It is one of those cards that I think really could motivate us and kind of get us out of a situation where we might feel a little bit stuck. And I think some of us have felt stuck this year. And so this is a very refreshing card to get, and something that I think will give us a lot of energy and, you know, move us along and transition. So this card is very similar to the Page of Wands, but there are some differences. And if we look at this card, we can see that there's a person on a horse, and they have on that same sort of garment with the salamander, and it represents fire. It represents that fire energy, but early alchemists also thought it represented the energy of renewal and rebirth and innovation. And that's really important because the person on this horse, they look very protected. They have on this armor, and they look very confident. And that's what really drives this card, is that belief and that new idea, that confidence and that new spark of something that motivates you or influences you in a certain way and pushes you in a certain direction. So those salamanders, you can see them in many different decks, but I really like this one from the 78 Tarot Mythical, and how the knight has also taken hold of the reins of the salamander and is riding that instead of the horse. The horse is very important as well. And if we look at the horse on the RWS system, one of the things that's important to note is that the horse looks a little bit hesitant. And that's another key to this card, is that maybe all the ideas or this concept that you have, or this new way of looking at something, this new novel approach, maybe it's not fully developed. Maybe it's not something that's totally fleshed out and completely ready, but sometimes that pays off. And one of the things that we notice here on this card is that the wand does have some branches coming off, some leaves coming off of it. And that's an indication that there is some growth that can come from this. There is some way that this will benefit the knight and will really help them to learn, or maybe even profit from this adventure, this new project that they're taking a look at. And so I really like what it says here from the 78 Tarot Mythical about this card. I think it really does embody that energy well in these words. It says, "Be bold and let nothing hold you back. Change it up a bit and go with a novel approach." So that's kind of what I was talking about. Be very confident about this approach, be very open to going with this new idea, and think it through, but don't get so bogged down making plans that you lose the chance to act. So this is a great card for working, like I said, when you get stuck in a situation. Maybe you have a great idea or you have a plan, and you just feel kind of like a lack of motivation, a lack of willingness to kind of really get out there and make this happen. This is a card that you can meditate with, or that you can really work with to regain that, to renew that energy, just like the salamander gazing at the sun. And I think that's a very beautiful thing. I think that's a very good way to approach this situation. And so the next thing I want to look at is, actually, you know what, let me finish reading this. So it says, "Let your passion guide you, but take care that confidence doesn't turn into arrogance, and that enthusiasm doesn't turn into frustration at the first hurdle." So there's going to be challenges, of course. You'll see that on this card. There's a barren landscape. There are some mountains in the background. So there are some obstacles, and you're going to encounter those things, but to not give up and to continue to maybe make improvements or tweak things a bit. But you'll learn as you kind of go along what really works. And if you never get the ball rolling, then you're just going to be kind of stuck and you'll never know. So it does say to avoid arrogance. And this energy can be unbalanced in a sense if you are not really thinking things through as far as how you use this energy when it affects others. And that's something I want to get into in just a moment. So the next card that I want to look at is from the Tabula Mundi, which is a Thoth-based deck. And on this card, you'll see that there is a lion pulling a chariot. So the horse is not there, but it still has that energy of someone on something and they're controlling it and moving in a certain direction. Now he does look like he's swerving a bit. The horse does, the lion does look a little bit uncertain, but it still has that same overall feel. Now the reason why there's a lion here is because this card is actually the energy of all the fire signs. So Leo, Sagittarius, and Aries, all within the wand's suit. So all within fire. So it's fire within fire, just like the page. However, where the page was earth and fire, the knight is air and fire. And you can see at the bottom of this that it says air and fire, or it says air of fire. And it also says Prince of Wands. And we talked about that before as well, how those names may change. You'll see that come up again in just a moment. But one of the things to notice here on this card is that you have the lion for Leo, and then you have the wings up here on the lion here. And then you also have a winged helmet. So this, I really like that because it does give us that indication that this is about fire, but it's also about air providing fuel for that fire. And it's about that idea sparking that motivation to move forward. So, without air, you don't have any fire, and it can't exist without that air. So you have to have these ideas and these concepts first. And then once you get that spark, and then you can move forward and go in that direction. But it does take something. It doesn't have to be fully developed, but there does have to be something there. And it looks like, he's swerving, and it does look like the lion is a bit uncertain. But the thing about it is, it doesn't mean that he's not able to control this. It could just mean that he's taking a different approach. He's changing directions. And that reminds me of the energy of Sagittarius, which is also a part of this. And that energy is about it's very mutable, what we call changing and shifting, and it's about not being afraid to add in new pieces to the puzzle or new ingredients to make something a little bit different. And you will see a lot of times on different decks, this is the patch tarot down here at the bottom. I don't know if you can see that. I'll try to get a closer up image of it, but you can see the symbol for air and the symbol for fire. So there are some decks that will include that on there. So if you ever see that, that's just telling you a little bit about the energy of the card, because overall you have the image of the card, you have the symbols, you have the elements, and they all blend together to give you an overall energy of the card. Now that doesn't mean that that's exactly what it's going to mean when it comes up in a reading. Things are going to vary depending on the context, like I talked about before, but it's great to have these overall ideas of what's trying to be put out there as far as each of these cards is concerned. And I think that really does help with readings to really know all these things, because they do play a role. And of course you can always read intuitively, but the more you learn as you go along, I think that always adds to the depth of a reading, and it really can work for a lot of people. Not in all cases, but for a lot of people. And speaking of people, when you get these cards in readings, a lot of times the court cards will represent actual people, but then a lot of times they'll represent an energy within yourself or an energy that for an overall situation. And so you have to really kind of think about where that fits. So let's move on here and talk about the element from the periodic table that this is associated with. And so that element is 10. So you can see this is a tin can here, and you can see that the symbol here for 10 is Jupiter. And I think that's very fitting, because Jupiter is a very expansive energy. It's a very consuming energy and very adventurous, and it's about exploration and just learning from that as well and growing from that experience. So that's a very good planet to represent this element, and for this element to represent this particular card in this suit of court cards. And so the element 10, it's really interesting. I want to show you a picture here of something, and this kind of reminds me of the actual Knight of Wands. So right here, if you look at this image, you can see that there's a 10 horse. So this is a blown up image of just a little statue made out of 10 of a soldier riding a horse. And I thought that was really interesting and really fit in this situation. And 10 has been involved with, the advancement of armies and of civilization for a long time. So the Bronze Age was when 10 really did make a big impact on our lives and affects us even to this day. So the Bronze Age was when they realized, and this kind of happened by mistake, they realized that when you mix copper and tin together, you get bronze. And bronze is a much more stable thing to make armor from, and weapons and tools, and to really start enhancing the military in a sense. And it's just a new technology that came into play. And it was just much more robust than just using copper alone. And it allowed these armies to really advance and take over different territories. And that's not the important part. The important part was the spread of ideas, the spread of new innovations, and things that really did push civilization forward from a stuck kind of Stone Age type of technology, and to move in a new direction. And it wasn't completely thought out. It just kind of happened. It wasn't something that was a concept that was researched a lot. It was just sort of trial and error, and it worked. And so, you got this big shift. And again, with the military, with Napoleon, he was able to really grow his army by the use of tin. So he had a reward out for anyone that could develop technology to help him feed his soldiers. And at the time, when soldiers would go out and go on journeys or go out into different territories, it was hard to feed them. And it was hard to keep the food from spoiling. And so over the years, I think it was about in like 1810, they finally developed the tin can. And the person that did, I think his name was Peter Durand. And he was able to develop this and get it out there to soldiers, and it was used in the Civil War. And so tin played a major role in really shifting events in our lives. And it's not always the best thing. It's not always the going to be the thing that we ideally want to use it for. But nevertheless, there's a big change that comes into play when we do use the energy of the Knight of Wands, and in this case with tin. So I want to read something to you from the Shimmering Veil Tarot. This is a beautiful deck, by the way. This is the card this is called the Warrior of Fire. So they changed the name again here. But I really do like what it says here, because it has a very important key to what I was talking about before, especially with arrogance and with using the energy of the Knight of Fire in a way that is going to be stable and balanced. So it says here, the Warrior of Fire stands in front of an erupting volcano, holding a flame in one hand and a hammer in another. Like Prometheus, he brings fire to mankind. Like Vulcan, he can harness the volcano to work metals. I think it's interesting that they're talking about metals here, because tin is a metal, and working with metal has really shifted, like I said, our whole entire direction. And it says, though he usually uses that gift to create arms for mankind's incessant wars. And again, that idea of that night energy being involved in wars. We should remember, though, that his gift with fire is that of creation and even alchemy. So it's more of a creative, transforming energy than it is of a warlike and destructive energy. And overall, you can see that anytime tin or the night's energy is involved, it's not going to be something good, and something good's going to come from it. There's going to be a benefit to it. That's why he's holding that wand with those leaves on it. So always keep that in mind. But the more you have that pure energy of what the Knight of Wands means, the better off that result's going to be. And it says, the Warrior of Fire has somehow retained an essential purity of vision that sustains him on his journey. So that's what I'm talking about here. That's that key, that purity of the vision of the Knight of Wands, what it really means. His intuitive grasp of the element and materials he works with enables him to create. Intuitive and idealistic, he is sometimes rather naive and can end up being used for more cynical than he has. So, you know, there's that balance there, but it's whatever the user of that energy decides to do, what direction they decide to take things in. So I think those were all the cards that I wanted to go through, and pretty much the message that I wanted to get out there about this energy. And so, like I said, I think it's a great energy to start the year out with. You know, get those projects going, go with those ideas, you know, make those things happen. Really, you know, feel that motivation for things during this part of the year. And I think things are going to be looking up. I think that, you know, that things are changing. We're going to be shifting here. Get that night energy in there to take some novel approaches and really make this time work for you. You know, once those thoughts get out there and our collective consciousness is really thinking of things as improving, we'll bring that energy into this situation and we'll go with it. Everything may not be clear, but continue to move forward just like the night. So thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Will. This is Atypical Tarot. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.